Hello, Amine. Hello, Si Mohamed. I'm so happy to see you. You're in Rabat, right?
Correct.
And Si Mohamed Boutjdir, you are in New York.
Yes.
Okay, so welcome to this broadcast. I can see a lot of people joining us. أول حاجة كنقول لكم رمضان مبارك وكل عام وانتم بخير وانتم وليداتكم والعائلة ديالكم. Si Mohamed, on se connaît depuis 1994 et Amine, on se connaît, je ne me rappelle pas la première fois qu'on s'est vu, mais on est des frères et on a grandi ensemble. Donc, je ne sais pas si les gens savent qu'on est des cousins, mais je suis très fier d'avoir un cousin comme toi, Amine.
Et je suis fier d'être ton cousin aussi.
Moi, je suis fier d'être parmi des cousins et des amis très chers que, bien sûr, que j'ai connus. Je pense, les premières personnes que j'ai connues aux États-Unis quand je suis venu il y a 31 ans, c'était Samir et Amine. I'm really happy of this. Je suis très content à la gathering back, and I also want to thank Samir for putting together this very nice webinar and for also inviting Amine and having, you know, two birds with one stone.
I think these Zooms or this technology has brought us much closer. I remember when we first met, Amine, tu te rappelles de IRC, Mosaic?
Gopher.
Huh?
Gopher.
Yeah,
IRC. Gopher than IRC.
Yeah. If you want to contact somebody, you need to really be a coder. You need to code the message, and it was interesting world. It was. I think we have seen the birth of the internet. We saw it in school at that time or at the university. I mean, how was your experience with the internet birth as it was happening at the university?
Well, first of all, let me also express my delight to meet you back again online and meet Si Mohamed. It's been a long time. Ramadan Mubarak Saeed to everyone. تقبل الله الصلاة والصيام والقيام. But it was, I lived it as an embarrassment.
Okay.
And the reason is, you know, we were doing things like this on the early chat tools, and I was one of the few computer scientists. You guys were from different disciplines, and I thought I was smarter about computers, but I was so embarrassed because I never saw the internet phenomenon coming. We were just playing with those tools, and I went back and coded and did my research and all of that. I never thought the internet thing was coming. So yeah, I lived it mostly as a user and as an embarrassed computer scientist.
Si Mohamed, you came from France, right?
Yes, I actually finished my doctoral degree in France, and at that time, I really had two choices: either go back to Morocco. I was actually, go back to Morocco or stay in France. I mean, US was really not in my larger radar. So I think at one point I did go back to Morocco, and lots of probably some of my friends and people who know me who are listening now will be hearing it for the first time. I don't talk about these details, or I should say I was never given the opportunity to talk about my personal experience, but nevertheless, I went back to Morocco at that time. As all of you know, I'm working in cardiovascular research. So I had very good contact with Ibn Omar, who was the head of the cardiovascular division for Rabat, Suisse. And he was at that time the personal one of the physicians of the king. So we built really a good relationship. So I went to see him, and I clearly remember, I will never forget that one time, he grouped all his staff and we sat in his room and he said, look, Dr. Boutjdir, il vient d'avoir sa thèse. Qu'est-ce qu'il peut faire pour nous aider? And all the faces froze. So anyway, there was basically no infrastructure for me where I can continue to do my research, etc. So I went back to France, and for me, then during that process, I realized that I really need to go to a country where they are at the forefront of what I want to do, which is really cardiovascular research. And with the means of what we have at that time, you know, I looked up a couple of things, and for whatever reason, I stuck into New York. And you might actually also not know, I was actually accepted to Columbia. And the reason I didn't go there is because my current university, they were faster in getting just the paperwork, the visa, J1 visa, as some of you might know, was so quick. And I came to the US. At that time, I really was not planning to stay more than 2 years, which is the regular postdoc. And I said, you know, I'll go back either to France or to Morocco. And I came to US within 6 months. My boss called me and said, oh, you're on a J1 visa. Why don't you, you know, let's get you a green card. I didn't even know what a green card is. I said, no. I told him, no, thank you. I'm not staying here. And New York is a tough cultural shock. You know, I came from Paris. I clearly remember I'll come to the hospital, and in the morning at 8 in the morning, and I wait for all the ladies to go first. And each time I do that, all these big American guys just walk onto the elevator, and I would have to sit and wait for la galanterie. Anyway, long story short, I stayed the first year, and it's actually during that time that I was embedded so much into the culture and into the opportunities available that I decided by the end of the second year that that's where I'm going to stay.
The reason I asked you about France is, you know, Amine and I were in the US. I think I was there in '85, and Amine joined me in '86. And we saw the birth of the internet. And in France, there was something called Minitel. And so Minitel was much more advanced than the internet when it was born. As a matter of fact, when I joined Microsoft in '98, I went to visit Tunisia, and Tunisia was just about done to install the Minitel network in Tunisia. So that tells you a little bit about, you know, early adopters and late adopters, etc. But you came from a culture already of networking. How did you see, like when you came to the US, did you miss the Minitel, or I mean, what was, because at that time it was very popular?
Yeah, to be honest, I think for me, I know that both you and Amine are mostly, you know, technology gurus besides, you know, all the other things that, if you're interested, I'm more, as you know, I'm more in the biomedical field. So the technology came to us a little later than you guys. When I came to United States, to be honest with you, I think, of course, compared to France, what I noticed was, you know, we had those giant servers, or whatever you call those giant, not servers, those giant computers, because we used to do lots of huge data acquisition that required large computers, and it's really rare, to my recollection, that I've seen a medical research program having engineering people work there. So we actually had biomedical engineering people who majored in engineering that were able to come and help us with data acquisition, data storage, and all the IT, what we call now IT-related matters, which we didn't have in France at that time. Again, it all depends on, in my view, on where I was actually, when I was in France, I was in a hospital, literally all the labs were in a hospital setting. Mm-hmm. So there was no infrastructure of having like a mixed of medical / biomedical / engineering.
Amine, you came to, I came to the US, and I think I was one of the, maybe the only one of my generation to make that jump, at least that year. I know that Zuhair, your brother, went to the US, and our other cousin, but when I went there, none of my cousins were there. So I went to the US not knowing anyone. And a year after that, you joined me. And you went to school, and you got a Ph.D. from the US. And you were faced with either staying in the US or going back home. Can you tell us about what decisions you have made then, and were you happy with your decision? By the way, does everybody know that Dr. Amine Bensaid is the president of Akhawayn University? So just a great honor to have him with us in this call.
Thank you. It's a very important question. Well, it was very easy for me. 2 years of hardship sleeping before I came, and 2 years of hardship sleeping after I came. It was one of the toughest decisions, and I think it took a lot of thinking and then a lot of luck for me. A lot of thinking because I came to a conclusion, and my hope from this exchange, really your question is in relationship to my hope from this exchange. My hope is that we'll have a very friendly chat with friends, with pals, and hopefully, as far as I'm concerned, help Moroccans who are abroad and Moroccans who are in Morocco, those who have decided to come back, those who are thinking about going back and so on, help them feel happier with their choices. I think that's what the experience has been with me. For some time, every time I talk to a brilliant Moroccan abroad, my objective was to get them to come back. That has changed a few years ago. And I think the main objective today is just for everybody to make the right decision for them and to be happy with the right decision for them. So the conclusion personally I came to after a couple of years of thinking was that I would be happy staying in the US only if I married the American culture. And at that time, I thought that to marry the American culture, I had to divorce my Moroccan culture. And I knew I was not ready to divorce my Moroccan culture. And for a couple of years, I had friends and family tell me, get a green card, get a passport. If you want to come back, at least get citizenship before you come back and so on. And I told them, I remember this vividly. I made the decision and I told them, I did not want to do this because I was so happy in the US. I knew that if I did this, I would risk staying there and I would risk being miserable a number of years down the road. This was me. And so that was one main conclusion I came to. And then I developed a tool. And the tool for me was that I made a list of everything bad that I knew was bad in Morocco. Everything that I knew would be difficult for me in Morocco. And 2 years working in Morocco, I had it right next to on the wall next to my desk. And when students would come in, they would see it. And I had all the list of everything that I knew. And every time it became difficult for me, I looked at the list and I saw, and I thought, this was already there. So I knew it before I made the decision. So I do not need to revisit it. That's how I coped for a couple of years. And actually, I almost went back. The decision I had made was that I would remain in Morocco as long as I did not feel I was drowning into what I thought were challenges in Morocco. As long as I thought I could have some modest epsilon added value, or at least where I would not drown. And in June, I think June or July 1997, I decided to go back to the US, signed the contract, was going to go there on January 1st, 1998. And then something happened and I didn't go, something personal. And, so I said it was a lot of thinking, very personal, and there was a lot of luck because it was very difficult for me to know where I was going to go back to in Morocco. And I knew I wanted to spend all my life, professional life, doing research. I knew I did not want to teach. And then this one day I received a newspaper announcement sent by a friend for the creation of this American Model University in Morocco. So I'll tell you about the story. I don't want to take up too much of the time. There's a nice story about how my American friends saw it. And I think it was, you were calling it earlier, Samir, soft landing. I thought of it as a buffer between the US and Morocco. And I think I was very, very lucky. Both the timing was unbelievable, and then just the nature of what the institution was, and how much of a very nice buffer it offered to somebody like me coming back from the US to Moroccan culture, and be able to reconcile somehow between the challenges that we can talk about when we're deciding about staying wherever we may be outside of Morocco and coming back to Morocco.
When I was in Microsoft, I was in Morocco. Being kind of at the center of technology in Morocco, I had a lot of people that used to reach out to me. They still do, about like coming home. And many of them face challenges, and challenges such as like real estate costs, and sometimes they find it outrageously high for Morocco, because most of them left 10, 20 years before. They come back and they were used to a level of cost of real estate, and they find it outrageous. They're also surprised about like schools for the kids. That's a big challenge. The justice system, they really get caught into very weird problems that they're not used to. Because in Morocco we have false problems. We don't have problems. We have false problems, things that appear out of nowhere. Obviously, corruption is a big thing that surprises a lot of us, and we find it like it's not right. It's not normal. Many of us come home and we find out that certain positions are taken by people who don't deserve those positions, and there's kind of unfairness feeling. And many of us, like we find like we're misunderstood. And when we talk to people, they say, "Oh, you live in another world. You live in another planet." Mohamed, am I right when I say all these challenges?
From my perspective, and again over the years, having spoken to lots of other friends and colleagues, I sincerely think that the decision to go back or stay is an individual decision. I don't think there is like a model or a template that can fit all. I think it's an individual / family decision, meaning that each one will have eventually to confront the situation and make a decision based on their own parameters and priorities before going one way or another. And I also, again, I've been here in New York for 31 years. I really believe that there is no absolute winner or loser. I think people make decisions and they move on with them, and they assume the consequences, whether they're back home in Morocco or stay in the US. Staying in the US or in Europe is not necessarily an easy ride. For those of you who have not stayed here, I think the challenges can be encountered at both places. But the most important thing that I want to mention, because I told Samir earlier that we need to put things into context. And I'm going to be brief. What I mean by that is for us to be able to go back to Morocco and flower and succeed, you have to have some kind of policies locally that will, you know, provide you the resources and the platforms to grow. And hence the term diaspora engagement policy. So this concept of diaspora engagement policy actually came in the early 1990s, where the majority of Moroccans residing abroad was based on what is called remittance based approach policy. In other words, Morocco is only interested in people who bring in money. And I think now it's about over $8 billion a year. And it made sense at that time that the other policies be associated with that goal, is send in more money. Now, the problem with that is Morocco at that time, or I should say the government at that time, had no really interest in encouraging people to come back, because you're going to lose income. So if you are bringing all this amount of money, I don't want you to come here, I want you to stay there. So over the years, this policy changed because they realized also that this first, second, and third generation of Moroccans, some of them come to visit Morocco, some don't, and that this concept of remittance might not actually hold. Because as I said again, if your kids or grandchildren grow overseas and have no direct contact, there will be no incentive for them to send money. So they switched to this thing called skill mobilization based approach. So we move from remittance based approach to skill mobilization based approach. And again, these are all policies that the Moroccan government put in place. So when they moved to this skills, that's where you started seeing all these, outreach effort, and that's where the first Ministry of Moroccans residing abroad was built, and it was followed by a certain number of infrastructure locally. They have CCME, Hassando Foundation, regional investment centers, they have Bank Amal, they have FinCom, they have Marhaba operation. So a lots of things that were in place. And to sum up, all these things were really good because Morocco then moved from brain drain to brain gain. What does that mean in my view is some of us, it's okay to stay overseas as long as we can harness your expertise from where you are. And the challenge with this model also, the most recent one, that is the skilled diaspora engagement policy, is all these infrastructures that I mentioned, CCME, Hassando Foundation, is they really were not, they were disconnected between themselves. And at a certain point, they even competed with each other. And because of that, they did not have a very high positive impact in really taking advantage of the diaspora in Morocco. And I'm gonna stop here and come back to talk a little bit more about how do we go from here? Because at the end of the day, if I understand correctly, we wanna see, should you move back or you should not? And if you and should you decide to move back, are there the l'accueil nécessaire for you to succeed? And what I mean succeed as an entrepreneur, somebody who will have added value on the country, succeed as a scientist, la recherche médicale. COVID proved to all of us that la recherche médicale, if it's not at the, at the forefront, it can shut down all institutions. And as I said, I'll come back in a second.
So Mohamed, it's good information. But however, pragmatically speaking, I honestly, or Amine, who came back to Morocco, did not count so much on any support or any red carpets waiting for us. Both had PhDs, both had a lined up career in the United States, both had the opportunity to get our citizenship and stay there as long as we wanted. PhD in the US is a priority worker, and they get red carpets to stay there. And we came back. And I'm going to give just 4 pieces of advice to anyone who wants to come back with total, ignore all the support that the governments may bring to you. I understand that in certain situations, and we are living during this week, someone like Dr. Monsef Slawi, who is asked by the superpower in the world to drive the whole vaccine research and save all these people in America and in the world. I'm sure that Dr. Slawi was totally ignored, or I'm sure that he volunteered to help. And so many Moroccans abroad volunteer to help. We feel so powerful when we're outside, and we feel that we can bring so much to Morocco. But as soon as we knock the doors and we find the doors closed, we just leave. We don't make that extra effort. And the right effort is actually to go to Morocco and to live in Morocco. So my 4 pieces of advice, and I will ask afterwards Amine to give also his piece of advice, because both of us are in Morocco now. By the way, if anybody has any questions, submit them in the Q&A, and we will, shortly I'm gonna pick up some of the questions from there. I already saw some questions. I saw somebody who suggested that we talk in Darija. أنا ما عنديش مشكلة نهضر بالدارجة. I'll give this 4 pieces of advice بالدارجة باش كل شيء يفهمني. أوكي. أول حاجة فاش الواحد يخمم يدخل لبلادو، يدخل المغرب، والمغرب راه قطعة منا بغينا ولا ما بغيناش. هذاك كنت كنعطي واحد ليكزومبل، قال لي شي واحد علاش دخلتي؟ قلت له أنا دخلت غير باش ذاك الصباح ناخذ الشفنج والرغايف. That was my motivation باش ندخل. My advice.
عندنا دابا في الكوينز، كاين في الكوينز.
دونك انا البلاصه اللي كنت فيها كنت في لا كارولين دو نور، ما كاين لا شفنج ولا رغايف ولا بتي بان. So first of all, prepare soft landing. Know what you will be doing.
دارجة.
اوكي. وجد راسك واحد النزول بالعقل بالظرافات. C'est-à-dire l'exemple ديالي وديال سي امين دكتور امين بنسعيد، سي كو انا دخلت ديريكتومون نخدم مع مايكروسوفت، دونك غنخدم مع ميشن ناسيونال. سي دكتور امين بنسعيد يخدم مع الاخوين، واحد الجامعه جديده انجليزيه، الرعايه الساميه، واحد العدد المسائل اللي جعلوا حتى الدخول ديالنا يكون شويه سهل. وانا في الدماغ ديالي فاش دخلت للمغرب مع مايكروسوفت قلت انا ندخل ندوز عام وغير نتاقلم شي شويه ونلونسي لافير ديالي ولا جو سور دو مايكروسوفت ولا نرجع. ستادير كو في لو سي في ديالي ما غنعملش واحد التقبه. لو فيت كو دخلت للمغرب افيك ان سوفت لاندين معروف ما غادي تعملش ان ترو دون مون سي في. هذه الكونساي نيميرو 1. لو كونساي نيميرو 2 قبل ما تدخل créer un petit peu de networking, c'est-à-dire يكون عندك العلاقات مع الناس بحالي بحال امين بحال بزاف المغاربه اللي ديجا دازوا من هذا لو بروسيس باش pour vous aider à éviter des erreurs باش ما الواحد ما يعملش الاخطاء باش ما يقد يقتصد في الوقت والفلوس والانرجي واحد العدد المسائل. اي واحد بغى يدير شي حاجه. لو تروازيام بوين اللي غيعمل لونتربرونيا انا ننصحكم ديروا بي تو سي ما ديروش بي تو بي. راه مشكله في المغرب ديال الريكوفرمون راه كتعمل بروجي وكتسني وكتهذا ولكن سير شوف البايمون راه هذيك مشكله كبيره في البايمون. دونك تروازيام بوين عمل بي تو سي الا كنت غتعمل لونتربرونيا. لو كاتريام بوين كيف كيقولوا اون انجلي دونت بوت اول يور ايجز ان وان باسكت. ما تدخلش فلوس كلهم وتقطع الصله مع ديك البلاد منين جيتي ولا هذا. خلي رجل هنا ورجل هنا حتى تشوف راسك قابط مزيان في المغرب عاد ديك الساعه ندخل المسائل ديال كلها للمغرب. دونك هادو لي 4 بوين جيسبر كو تعاون بعض المغاربه في لي ديسيزيون ديالهم. دكتور بن سعيد. You're on mute.
Yes, sorry, I muted it.
I'm going to unmute you.
It. So, okay. Écoute, je pense que tu as couvert l'essentiel en termes pragmatiques, je pense, de ce qui minimise les risques pour quelqu'un qui décide de rentrer. Et donc, peut-être que j'essaierai d'être un petit peu complémentaire en essayant disons, d'adresser une composante psychologique. Parce que pour moi, le plus difficile a été la composante psychologique. Plus que où est-ce que je vais, etc. etc. Et bon, et je vais utiliser quelques anecdotes et principes retenus de quelques amis, mais principalement de lauréats de l'université d'Akhawayn. Il y a quelques 6000 lauréats, 30% parmi les 6000 lauréats sont à l'étranger. Et vu la formation, vu la nature de la formation, c'est normal. Le risque est grand. ولكن الحمد لله كيمشي ويجي c'est-à-dire ils vivent une sorte d'un Marocain international qui vit en osmose entre l'international et le Maroc. Et parfois, ils le font pour des opportunités purement professionnelles, et parfois, ils le font aussi parce que la psychologie ou les défis dans le Maghreb, etc., n'arrêtent pas. Et donc, je partage avec vous quelques raisons pour lesquelles on décide de rester là-bas, d'un point de vue, encore une fois, peut-être plus psychologique. Il y a la question de valeur. Je pense que vous avez tous les deux fait allusion un petit peu aux valeurs. La corruption, ou la méritocratie, ou l'équité, ou la dignité, etc. Et ça revient tout le temps. Et ça dépend vraiment, tu as raison, ça dépend où est-ce que ce Marocain brillant, en retournant, où est-ce qu'il atterrit. D'accord ? Donc, à la hasab فين il atterrit, إما كيكون هذا le décalage en valeur كبير ولا كيكون صغير ولا كيكون كيشوفوا كل نهار ولا كيكون كيشوفوا غير مرة في الأسبوع ولا كيشوفوا مرة في العام. Mais bon, c'est clairement ici. L'autre chose, c'est une sorte de confort, je pense de confort que nous gagnons quand nous vivons à l'étranger. Et que ces alumni dont je parle ont aussi quand ils vivent à l'étranger. Et ça me rappelle un petit peu un ancien secrétaire général des Nations Unies, je pense que c'était Kurt Waldheim, il avait dit que le développement, c'est quand la science devient une culture. وهاد les pays développés كتعيش فيهم هادشي يعني au quotidien toi tu es carré, eux ils sont carrés plus ou moins et donc les gens commencent à s'identifier aussi aux autres au quotidien يعني هذاك اللي كيتلاقى معاك tout le monde est plus ou moins sur la même longueur d'onde et parfois j'ai senti aussi qu'il y a une inquiétude subconsciente de la part de certains amis que quand ils vont rentrer, ils ont peur que ce manque de valeur ou là, ce décalage de valeur soit banalisé pour eux. Et parfois ils le savent de manière explicite, parfois ça trotte dans la tête. Une autre raison qui est liée un petit peu à ce que tu as dit, Samir, par rapport à l'entrepreneuriat et par rapport au B2C, etc., comment minimiser les risques et tout, et les risques par exemple avec le B2B et tout, c'est lié à un article que c'est Younes Mouhamed, l'ancien DG de l'ONE, qu'il a sorti, je pense, il y a quelques jours, lui aussi ayant vécu beaucoup entre différents pays et le Maroc et tout ça. Et oui, il fait une analogie assez intéressante entre le chaos en physique et entre ce que l'on vit dans un pays tel que le Maroc. Et pourquoi ? Simplement parce qu'on n'a pas encore stabiliser notre système de développement. Et vous le voyez très bien au plus haut niveau de l'État, c'est devenu une priorité. On est capé, limité par le niveau de maturité de notre système de développement. Younes, ce qu'il dit, c'est que pour qu'on soit dans un système qui n'est pas chaotique, il faut avoir défini ces objectifs, mis en place les organismes, les structures, etc., et être engagé sur le long terme. Parce que quand tu vas vers des objectifs, en tant que pays, tu as bien sûr des difficultés. Comme un entrepreneur. Tu dois être agile, et tu dois revoir, et tu dois persévérer, etc. Au Maroc, ça a été le cas sur un certain nombre de chantiers, et sur ce certain nombre de chantiers, le Maroc a vraiment réussi. Mais ça ne l'a pas été surtout, comme c'est le cas d'un certain nombre de choix dans des pays développés. Donc, فاش كيجي هذاك le Marocain كيطيح في شي وحده من هذوك كيطيح كيتبومبا من هنا وكيمشي لهنا etc. Pourquoi ? Parce que les choses ne sont pas toujours aussi claires. Alors, une raison supplémentaire, il y a, Samir, tu en as parlé tout à l'heure, la stabilité du système dans des pays développés fait que, puisque les objectifs sont clairs, les win-win sont plus faciles entre le pays, entre l'organisation et l'individu. Ce qui fait que, puisqu'ils savent, ils ont bien défini leurs objectifs. Ils font sentir un talent qui sert leurs objectifs comme un héros. يعني يكون نهار عايش بحال الا انت كتحس براسك راك انت هو اللي شاد لي زيتازوني ولا شاد المانيا ولا شاد فرنسا etc. Au Maroc, c'est pas le cas. Au Maroc, typiquement, tu sens que tu es un pion parmi d'autres. Pourquoi ? Parce que souvent, même quand il y a des objectifs au niveau du pays qui sont bien définis, ça ne cascade pas. Ça ne cascade pas à tous les niveaux et jusqu'à l'entreprise, etc., etc. Ce qui fait que l'attitude هي عجبك ما عجبكش الله يهنيك راه كاين 100 منك. وداك الفشوش اللي كنتفشو فاش كنكونوا à l'étranger parce que كيعتبرك انت كراه هو اللي شاد له داك الشيء كله وكتجي tu tombes de haut. Et psychologiquement c'est pas toujours facile. Bon, après, naturellement, il y a, au niveau développement professionnel, etc., typiquement, il y a plus d'opportunités dans un pays où tout est en place, etc., qu'il peut y avoir chez nous, bien que, nous, on est comme une start-up. C'est-à-dire que il y a peut-être, le risque est plus grand, mais le payback peut aussi être très grand. Donc, on est sur les aspects, disons, psychologiques, c'est un petit peu ça que je vois. Alors, d'un autre côté, pourquoi rentrer? Encore une fois, psychologiquement. Pourquoi? Typiquement, tout le monde veut rentrer d'abord pour sa famille. Enfin, tout le monde, c'est trop dire. Mais une majorité de ceux que je connais veulent rentrer pour leur famille, parfois aussi, peut-être plus que la majorité, pour des choses qu'ils retrouvent dans la culture. Et souvent, ça fait ce tiraillement, comparing apples and oranges. D'un côté, développement professionnel ou l'opportunité d'Akshi, de l'autre côté, il y a un cœur. Il y a un émotionnel. Et le fait de ne pas pouvoir modéliser scientifiquement et dire « il y a dit la bonne décision », parfois fait que les choses sont très difficiles. Mais j'en connais beaucoup qui décident de revenir parce que leur volonté d'avoir un impact l'emporte sur le reste. C'est-à-dire entre le fait d'avoir une famille, une culture, et il se dit comment je vais le faire, mais je sais que là où je suis, je vais pouvoir apporter un plus, et c'est pour ça que je le fais. Pour ceux qui le font aussi comme ça et gardent ce cap, gardent ce mindset malgré parfois des défis qu'ils peuvent rencontrer, typiquement ceux que j'ai connus ont été heureux. La dernière chose, c'est ceux qui se sont dit moi, je suis heureux aujourd'hui là où je suis, mais je sais qu'à l'âge de 50, 55, 60 ans, etc., ils se projettent avec une famille, avec des enfants, etc. Et comment dans son imaginaire, il voit ses enfants et sa famille et tout. Et il y en a pas mal qui décident justement de rentrer plus tôt pour ne pas arriver disons, à une situation à cet âge qui n'est pas une situation avec laquelle ils s'identifient ou là avec laquelle ils pensent qu'ils vont être heureux. Donc voilà, j'espère que ça répond un petit peu à ta
merci
question.
beaucoup, Amine. Il y a trois types de personnes. Il y a ceux qui viennent juste de terminer leur diplôme. D'abord, on a 81 questions. Donc, j'essaie un petit peu de grouper les questions parce que là, je suis en train de voir. Donc, il y a trois types de personnes. Une personne qui vient de terminer ses études. Ok, Allah Salah, de l'énergie, je rentre chez moi, ou bien pour une affaire familiale, ou là pour créer quelque chose, ou là pour essayer de rejoindre dans leur tête une multinationale, ou là l'OCP, ou là. La personne qui vous dit c'est Amine, à la fin de sa carrière, si vous le canard, ça fait, alhamdoulilah, je mets le flot, j'ai suffisamment à je rentre, mais dans ces cas, c'est vraiment ce que j'appelle snowbird, c'est-à-dire que monsieur دار في المغرب وغيبقى ماشي جاي ما بين المغرب ولا برا ولا تيقول que je vais prendre ma retraite au Maroc, et tu as la personne au milieu de sa carrière qui veut rentrer pour des raisons familiales, pour des raisons que il voit un petit peu l'opportunité في المغرب كيدخل لشي صيف وكيبان له the land is green. It's green, but it's difficult. I can tell you. Donc, هادو les trois types. Une question aussi sur le côté recherche et développement. Moi, cet été, j'étais l'été dernier, quand les États-Unis, j'ai visité une université et j'ai posé une question. Quel est le pourcentage des professeurs vacataires par rapport aux professeurs qui sont à plein temps à l'université? Et j'ai été surpris qu'on me dise 80% des profs à l'université sont vacataires. C'est-à-dire qu'il y a une relation directe entre le private sector, entre la réalité, entre le marché et ce qui se passe dans les universités. les étudiants sont en train d'apprendre quelque chose qui est, how do you say, straight from the source. C'est-à-dire que le prof, que ce soit un hôpital ou une entreprise de technologie, il va partager les dernières connaissances avec l'étudiant. Parce que je visite, avec tous mes respects, quelques universités au Maroc, des choses, surtout quand j'étais à Microsoft, des choses qui n'ont rien à voir avec la réalité. Mais sur des concepts, peut-être que le prof alors que la réalité, c'est autre chose. Docteur Boutjdir, si tu peux un petit peu nous éclaircir là-dessus.
Donc, si la question qu'on débat اليوم هو واش ندخل ولا ما ندخلش, je pense que, je l'avais dit au départ, c'est très lié aux les policies that are locally available in Morocco. Parce que les gens ne prennent pas de décision le matin, عرفتي أنا ندخل غدا بلا ما يفكر واش عندي فين نخدم, واش كاين داكشي اللي خصني les outils de travail sur le terrain et qu'est-ce que je dois rapporter aussi. Amine راه هضر على واش أنا je suis très important فين كاين أنا دابا, واش يقدروا يعطيوني داكشي ولا غير l'équivalent ديالو. Donc pour moi c'est pas seulement une question واش نقدر ندخل ولا ما ندخلش, c'est أنا غندخل qu'est-ce qui va se passer. Donc غير باش نقول لكم بأنه il y a des modèles réussis partout au monde ديال الناس اللي دخلوا لبلادهم où ils ont très bien fait, très bien fait. Par exemple, la Chine, أنا شرحت لكم قبيلة المغرب بدا هاد لي this diaspora policies dans les années 90. La Chine était déjà 20 ans avant. Donc en Chine, par exemple, ils ont commencé ce processus de skilled diaspora process or concept beaucoup plus avant et c'était basé sur l'innovation. C'est ça le problème, c'est que je vous avais expliqué tout à l'heure que la diaspora qui est basée sur les remittances, c'est très bien en valeur de dollars, mais il n'y avait pas d'innovation associée avec. أنا خدام سميتو في فرنسا, كندخل واحد العدد وحنا تقريبا 100,000, كندخل واحد العدد سي دي مليون دولار, ولكن كدير كتدخل المغرب وكتشري دار, كتشري فيلا, كتشري هذه. There is no added value in terms of progress for the country. Autrement dit, c'est pas investi dans l'innovation dont on a besoin, parce que l'innovation, ça va créer les jobs. Et si ça crée les jobs, it cascades, ça va cascader. Donc, passer des remittances à skilled worker, c'est vraiment la solution. J'ai mentionné la Chine, la Corée du Sud, le Mexique, même le Mexique ici chez nous, l'expérience de la contribution de la skilled diaspora était vraiment réussite au pays. Donc, ça nous ramène toujours une fois, c'est que là, احنا بغينا encourager la diaspora ديالنا skilled diaspora باش ترجع, لابد هاد les services اللي ديجا راه قلت لكم, راه جي مونسيوني غير quelques-uns, راه انا نعاودهم. عندك سي سي ام, عندك حسندو فاونديشن, عندك هذوك لي ريجنال انفستمنت سنتر, دوك لي سونتر ريجيونال دانفستيسمون. انا اول مره دخلت المغرب وشفتهم جيتي تري رافي, قلت واو هادو دابا غير تدخل غتمشي تقول له فوالا راه انا جو سي انتربرونور, عندي هاد ليدي, غادي يجيب لك لي زوتوريزاسيون, يتكلف لك هذه وهذه. Et j'en avais discuté extensivement avec le ministère de l'MRE à l'époque. Elle a des régions, oui, on va s'occuper de tout et tout. Maintenant, est-ce que ces infrastructures-là communiquent avec elles, entre elles? Est-ce qu'elles sont efficaces? Ça, je ne sais pas. Mais les modèles de retour au pays d'origine qui sont réussis, ça existe. Merci.
Une seconde. Alors, j'ai une question Est-ce que, bon, il y a quelqu'un qui vient I'm a Central Paris student. I want to know, how can I come back to Morocco to work in the renewable energy sector? Should I first work abroad and get some experience, or maybe come back directly after finishing school? Dr. Bensaid?
Again, it's a modest contribution for whatever it may be worth, because as you may have reckoned, there is no right answer and wrong answer. In my humble opinion, I think you may want to manage it the same way that you manage any employment after graduation, which means that you want to look at what are the opportunities that you can find outside of Morocco. What are the opportunities that you can find in Morocco? And I personally would be happy to set you up with the right players in Morocco. And you compare, and you can imagine some career path. You can imagine a career path. It doesn't mean that everybody follows exactly the career path they have drawn. Well, again, it's good to have some picture of what you want to do. And so I think there are some opportunities in Morocco where you can do some very interesting things, whether you would be able to land them or not, and what is the competition, and where the project is with respect to your skills, and so on and so forth, because there are more and more intelligent employers in Morocco, smart in their recruitment. And so they will pick you or not pick you based on how you fit into their projects. And similarly, you could find things in outside of Morocco that may give you just the right experience to have that much more value in Morocco. So the way I perceive it today, and beyond everything that is psychological, that is value-based, that is family-based, that is not objective, beyond that, I see the rest as just any job search. It's like comparing between two companies and managing, trying to make the best for your career, looking at at two companies. And I think if your heart is in Morocco, whatever you do, wherever you do it, you will probably be having added value while being outside of Morocco. And I'm sure at some point you will come back to Morocco and you will have added value. So, so this is, to me, in my experience, I think it's very important to just have a cap, une boussole, la boussole, with respect to your relationship to Morocco, and you manage the rest to optimize the return for you, and to optimize your choices also beyond professional, family, and I think this clarity of criteria and of priorities for you will make you happy with your choices, as opposed to thinking, okay, is it the best thing? Is it to go back to Morocco now or not go back to Morocco now as a standard answer? The standard answer for everybody may not be the right answer for you. So I really think that you just want to clarify things for you, the same way that people have a challenge with their life purpose, they have challenge with their long-term mission and what they want to do with their life and so on. I think this is the kind of thinking, of deeper thinking, that it takes for you to be comfortable with your choices.
Dr. Boutjdir, you're in the medical field. You're really on the high end of research in the medical field. Were you ever asked to come back to Morocco and work? Did you get any serious offer to come back home? Because you're in a very needed area to help Morocco.
To be honest, nothing direct in terms of going back, though I have to say I have been involved in the establishment of the Science Park cities in Doha, Qatar. since 2006 as one of the advisors to Sheikh Mouzat bin Talal. And during that time, I was actually offered to go back there and be part of some executive management. But again, I was extremely honored and delighted, but my priorities did not line up with the priorities that were available there locally. But that did not prevent me from continuing to participate remotely. And this links me exactly to the question of the student. That is, you can contribute. Remember, I said earlier that there are two models. One model is you decide to go back and contribute on the ground, and if everything goes well, then we will be like the Chinese model or the South Korean or the Mexican model of expat contributing locally. Or you can decide and continue your higher education overseas and then contribute like what all of us are trying to do now from there. So you still have all these options. But long story short, no, I was not offered by Morocco any opportunity to contribute, although I've been involved, as you know, for the last 30 years directly in partnership with several ministries and several institutions in Morocco as part of the Moroccan American Competencies Network in US.
دونك قطر عطاوك اوفر باش تمشي لقطر والمغرب ما عطاك حتى اوفر. Just pour résumer.
Well, see,
لا just oui ou non صافي. ما ندخلوش في الديتاي.
If you allow me a comment here, I think it's tricky to perceive Morocco as one entity in this respect. And I know friends and colleagues who were sought out by some Moroccan entities. Shimra private, Shimra public, because they're managed as companies, as organizations, and every organization tries to serve its own purposes. And when there is a Moroccan jam abroad, sometimes they have even used the professional recruitment agencies, les chasseurs de tête and so on, specifically for some Moroccans with specific skills. So for this, again, I think it's important for Moroccans abroad who have the skills to also go about it, to try and, I think Mohamed said it earlier, to align their objectives with what is happening in Morocco. Not necessarily waiting for Morocco as a country to come and say, Allah يخليك راه هذا احنا كنجيو نخطبوك طالبين وراغبين, etc. علاش؟ غير sometimes there is not enough maturity in some entities in Morocco, and we said it earlier, because it's not like in a developed country. So we can wait until everything becomes more mature, and then everybody will come. And I know also, you're right, Mohamed, China has gone a long way in this, and I mean, we can talk for a long time about it. But at the individual level, my suggestion, very humbly to you, is that if you're making a decision at the individual level, do not wait for the country until the country is ready to come and seek you out. Now, if we're talking at an institutional level, as Mohamed was doing it earlier, he was, and I think it's important for people in charge in Morocco, I really love the innovation-based model. And I think it can be a wonderful win-win. There is no question about it. And I am in a position today where I can contribute a little bit to this. So, like there are even Akhawayn alumni who have been working on things like this, and and there have been entities that have been set up for this. So I love the innovation-based model, but at the individual level, I'm saying, please make your decisions. Do not wait for the entire country of Morocco to come and seek you out.
Dr. Boutjdir, just a second. I just want to make a comment here. You have these Moroccan professionals. I am seeing here some questions about, as Moroccan students in university in the US, I feel like there are not many opportunities for us to come back, and there are not much efforts from the government or private sector to attract young graduates from the US with a lot of potential. It is true. You're sitting in the US and you're constantly get calls, get from headhunters, from companies begging you to join them, or Europe, you know, or even China, and then you're actually begging to come home to get a job that will not fulfill 20% of what you're going to get outside Morocco, and still people look at you with like, who are you? Why should I hire you? So this is, it's again, psychologically, Dr. Bensaid spoke about it. It's a huge impact on the psyche of these young people. Donc, vas-y, Dr. Boutjdir, if you want to comment on that or what you...
Yeah, before coming back to that, I'm just going to go back to your original question you asked both of us, Amine and I, and you mentioned it earlier with the example of Monsef Slawi. I think at this stage, this is my personal opinion, that the Moroccan government probably should start considering, headhunting for all the Moroccan elites that are currently overseas. And I know you briefly mentioned that, and I'm sorry to take it from you, Samir. And like, for example, Monsef Slawi, I mean, we know he's Moroccan. We know he has gone to Morocco many, many times. But you mentioned that Samir to me, so I'm going to say it, and this is coming from him. Let's give him $100 million and tell him, look, here we go, set up a system where you can develop the biomedical research in Morocco. You also mentioned Sidi Azami. You're an expert in batteries, and you're an expert in renewable energy. So here is $100 million set up. We don't have like 100,000 of these people. We have only a few of them. So why don't we capitalize on them? Because these are the low-hanging fruit. And I think we went through, and I'm sorry to mention that, but for me, the context is always important. We went from remittance-based economy to diaspora skilled economy, that now we have to move into getting things really done. I think we cannot stay on the concept level. I think at this point, we need to jump in the pool and start swimming. And it's not impossible to be able to, incentivize these high caliber Moroccans who are available to contribute and bring them home. Now, going back to the student's question, I think those new graduates, again, the same story happens to what I said earlier, which is, do we have an infrastructure in Morocco that's available to recruit highly skilled according to local priorities? I am not sure about that. What I mean by that, to be specific, in Morocco, for example, we know that there is a certain number of high priority areas, one of which actually is renewable energy. Do we have any like recruiting tools or recruiting systems that will target those students specifically that are of Moroccan origin? I don't think so at this point. If I'm wrong, then I'm happy that they're there. Do we have recruiting agencies from Morocco targeting agriculture and agro-food? This is something we need. Do we have those that targeting industry and new technologies? So I think to sum up, I think we reached a point now where we have to start acting, period. No, I mean, actually, I like this word I use often. The problems, we've overdiagnosed them. they're already known. This is an overdiagnosis of the situation. We know what the issues are. We know what the problems are. Now we need to start really putting some solutions in place.
So this is really
Samir,
go ahead.
Can I add something to this? May I?
Go ahead.
You've been calling us Dr. this and Dr. that. And I've been calling you Samir, Dr. Benmakhlouf. May I?
Bye, Amine.
So I really like what Si Mohamed is saying, and I think it's really good input for people in charge in Morocco, and I think these kinds of messages reaching the right people should have an impact, would offer added value. Okay, the one thing I'd like to add is that I know, I just happen to know, I've been lucky to come across these things during my career in Morocco. I know cases of very talented Moroccans who realized that sometimes things were not clear enough, or there was not enough expertise in Morocco to understand what added value they could bring to Morocco. So you may have an added value that brings precious value to Morocco, but it just may be that the right person doesn't know it. So putting together a project like this and finding the right door and the person to talk to, or the entity to talk to, has worked for I know some brilliant Moroccans who have done this. So my suggestion here is that there are things to be done at two different levels, at the institutional level and at the individual level. If you are interested in coming to Morocco, younger or more senior, you have the choice of waiting for the institutions in Morocco until they identify you, or you can be more proactive. My suggestion is, if your choice is to come back to Morocco, take a proactive approach. I'm not saying that it's the right choice. You can, it's for you to decide. But if you decide that you want to come to Morocco, I know some who have been very successful at being proactive, identifying where they can bring in the value, convincing of it, and come in and doing a beautiful job.
Very good. One of the questions are about like salaries in Morocco. Okay, I think it's a lot of young people want to come home and question whether they can get a salary that's comfortable for them to live in Morocco. I can tell you from my experience, salaries in Morocco are okay. If you are good and you knock at the right door, you will get comparable salaries with even the US and Europe. So any thoughts about that, Amine or Si Mohamed?
You want to go ahead, Si Mohamed?
Go ahead, say Amine.
So actually, this makes me thinking about the question earlier from the young engineer from Central Paris. The proactiveness I was talking about for senior people can also be at the level of junior Moroccans, because for example, in France they have these job fairs of Moroccan companies going to France, and I have seen also in Montreal there have been things that are similar. There may not be things that are similar in the US, so organizing somehow to have the critical mass to be of interest to Moroccan companies and being proactive in reassuring them that there will not be a gap, a cultural gap. France is one thing, the US is another. Now part of our genes are French. We have the culture has gotten almost to our genes. So you want to be careful about this, and you want to take a proactive approach. And I think having that critical mass and being reassuring about the fact that there is no cultural clash, organizational cultural clash, would be helpful. Now, about salaries, well, and I can continue about this. You know, graduates of Akhawayn University are mainly in the US culture. I mean, they live for 4 to 6 years in the US kind of bubble. But they have the advantage that it's in Morocco, and when they leave campus, it's Morocco. So I think that, but I mean, the way they land their first jobs is through job fairs. And people have gotten to know the DNA, the signature on the AUI graduates, so they come hire them. So you somehow need to build something like this. Now about salaries, I think salaries in Morocco, starting salaries are relatively low, but I converge with what Samir said. 2-3 years later, if you're good, you start making very good money, and it really is in relation to this smartness, growing smartness of the Moroccan employer. كل شيء يعرف يحسب. If you bring them 100, they're ready to give you 2, right? Even though initially they start giving you 0.1. And it turns out that when they make 100 and they give you 2, it's a good salary. So it's really a supply and demand kind of thing. But there are opportunities. And again, I'm saying it because I have statistics. I have statistics of AUI alumni who are like this, and who have and as I said, they go back and forth between positions in Morocco and positions abroad. So yeah, if you're good and you're perseverant, you can do some really good things in Morocco.
Dr. Boutjdir?
So I think going straight to the salary issue, as everybody knows, US versus Morocco and versus even Europe, the salaries there's huge disparities in salaries. Just to give you an example, I don't think Europeans or Moroccans would be able to afford the salaries that, for example, medical doctors make in US. It's just incomparable. For one reason is these are incentive-based income. So the more you do, the more you make, which is an unbelievable concept if it was incorporated in any system in Morocco. In other words, incentive-based, meaning you bring in more, we give you more. It doesn't matter. You can make $10 million a year. Nobody, and your CEO makes probably 1/10 of what you make, your boss. As long as you can bring in income, there's no issue with that. Psychologically, I mean, the president of my university makes far less than the head of our cardiothoracic surgical unit, maybe in a factor of 10. And the president is the boss. But there is no psychological issue with that. So I think, again, I always like to put things in perspective. Salary issues have to be in the context of cultural change. Cultural change meaning accepting certain new things, even if you are in a leadership position, and being able to transmit that down the line. And I will stop there.
We're about an hour and 10 minutes. I will just add a few minutes because we need to wrap this up. One of the questions is, est-ce que l'entrepreneuriat pourrait être une solution qui faciliterait et encouragerait un retour vers le Maroc? I gave my 4 pieces of advice about l'entrepreneuriat, but I'm sure, Amine, si tu peux leur dire un petit peu your top of mind on that.
I think this is really something where there can be a win-win. A win-win between what Morocco can do and with the innovation-based model that Si Mohamed talked about, and between opportunities for Moroccan talents abroad. I think today there is not a full apparatus for this in order to minimize risks and get the best value and so on. There are some niches, and as a result, I think it really again it takes doing the homework and doing your marketing homework and seeing what the opportunity is and doing everything. I think that Samir said earlier, to manage your risk, have the right partners, and so on. So if you're looking for just a one-stop shop today that will give you all the answers to this, I'm personally not aware of it. But I think common sense and doing the right homework with the ways to mitigate risk, I think is the right way to go right now.
Alors la dernière question que je vais poser aux deux, et je vais aussi me la poser, c'est que est-ce que tu encouragerais les Marocains de rentrer au Maroc?
This is for you.
Okay, so I'll give you my sincere opinion في هذه القضية هذه. J'ai suivi أنا تبعت هاد l'évolution ديال le programme ديال المغرب, le gouvernement ديال المغرب pour attirer هاد les compétences. Et quand je dis attirer les compétences, je veux dire واش تدخل. Donc أنا ما غاديش نقول لك تدخل, je parle de compétences. à travers سميتو هاد السنوات هادو, et dans mon سميتو في نظري داروا واحد البروغري incroyable. Le problème est le suivant, je le disais tout à l'heure, c'est qu'ils ont créé كاع les infrastructures locales. انا شرحت لكم بنك الامال, انا ما كنتش كاع عارف حتى درت شويه ديال الهوم وورك اللي كي uniquement spécialisé pour donner des prêts les entrepreneurs marocains. كاين الاخرى فيهم هي مرحبا, حتى هي انا ما كنتش عارف حتى récemment un programme pour l'entrepreneuriat, etc. Donc ce qui est urgent maintenant, c'est d'essayer de interconnect, de connecter les institutions اللي كاينين اللي درت عليهم قبيله موجودين déjà sur place. هاد les bureaux régionaux إلا كانوا effective, if they're efficient in performing what they have to do, I really think that there is a huge opportunity في المغرب الناس اللي كما قال سي امين اللي باغيين يدخلوا, لانه سميتو le Maroc ne peut pas se développer à 100% غير حنا هادو اللي جلسنا برا. خاص واحد المجموعه ديال المغاربه ديالنا اللي يدخلوا ويخدموا sur le terrain. Donc le message ديالي اللي بغيت نعطيه هو انه دخل المغرب ولا ما تدخلش, سي ان شوا انديفيدوال. حتى واحد فينا ما يقدر يقول لك دخل ولا ما تدخلش. قلتها في الاول, خصك تشوف
واش تنصح ولا لا. انا ما قلتلكش واش تدخل, هذاك كل واحد غادي ياخذ. انا بغيت نقول لك واش تدخل, واش كتنصح باش الناس يدخلوا ولا لا.
كنصح باش الناس يدخلوا سيل بونس بان عندهم واحد انتيغي, اون ريزون باش يدخلوا, وبانه كاين واحد الادد فاليو. سا فو دير ils savent. حيت شوف ليكزامبل ديالك السي سمير والسي امين, سي با كومون. انتم دخلتي يو لاندد اون مايكروسوفت, السي امين دخل landed on Akhawayn. These are very exceptional cases. You are actually at the right end of the bell shape. You know, la courbe belle, là, vous n'êtes pas dans la moyenne. Donc, il faut faire son travail comme Amine a dit. Essayer de voir عندك les high chances, des chances كبار باش تدخل تلقى الخدمة, وما تضيعش الوقت وتبقى دوز عام وانت كتقلب على الخدمة. ولا تحت هذه الفرصه هذه, واي نوت.
سي امين كتنصح المغاربه باش يدخلوا ولا لا سورتو highly educated people diplomas experience tes conseils.
Par rapport à ça, mon conseil serait similaire au conseil que je donne à mon fils pour ce qu'il veut faire. Enfin, il finit bientôt son lycée. وكيقول لي شنو ندير ايتترا لو بوتونسييل هنا واش هنا ايتترا كنقول له ولي غير دير شوف انت اللي كيعجبك vraiment regarde ce que tu aimes et deviens le meilleur dans ce que tu aimes وما تهش الهم le marché. Et donc pour ça ce que je dirais c'est que si vous voulez rentrer au Maroc, rentrez. Pour rentrer, je pense si vous voulez vraiment rentrer au Maroc, rentrer, c'est la meilleure décision. Ne la gérez pas de manière simpliste. Ne la gérez pas de manière simpliste. Là, c'est une équation comme une autre. Je ne gérez pas de manière simpliste. Rentrer ne veut pas dire nécessairement et comme a dit Samir tout à l'heure, je vais brûler le passeport la Khorliandi. Non, ça veut dire que peut-être qu'il vaut mieux que je rentre demain, mais parce que j'ai fait le homework et je sais pourquoi je vais rentrer, où je vais rentrer, comment je vais rentrer, etc. Et peut-être que ça demandera 1 an de travail. Et donc voilà, quand je dis ne gérez pas de manière simpliste, ok, prenez la décision de rentrer et instruisez-la comme un projet, comme n'importe quel autre projet. Il n'y a pas de secret, il n'y a pas de magie particulière au fait de rentrer ou de ne pas rentrer. Il n'y a pas de magie qu'il n'y a pas dans d'autres décisions. Donc, moi, c'est ça si vous voulez rentrer, oui, c'est la bonne décision. 2, gérez-la, travaillez-la pour la réussir. Les Américains qui disent finding a job is a job. Moi, je connais la majorité des étudiants que j'ai connus durant toute ma carrière. Qui s'habou mra غادي يسالي l'université غادي يجيو يبقاو les employeurs qui يتهاتفوا عليه. Alors que c'est pas le cas. Pour trouver le bon job, il faut le préparer. C'est pas le diplôme بوحدو اللي كيعطيك le job. Donc je dirais la même chose pour rentrer au Maroc. Rentrer au Maroc, une fois que tu as pris la décision, prépare. Going back to Morocco is a job. Is what I mean.
Bon, Anna, je vais répondre à la question. Déjà, il y a la conférence le matin qu'il a organisé au Hayat al-Regency, ils m'ont invité. Et l'une des questions qu'on m'a posée, qu'est-ce que tu penses de la fuite des cerveaux? Et ma réponse était, je suis pour la fuite des cerveaux. Parce que si on ne prépare pas, si on ne donne pas l'opportunité, si on ne met pas le bon environnement, les cerveaux, c'est comme un oiseau qui ne veut pas que son enfant vole de ses propres ailes. Alors, aussi, j'encourage les Marocains à rentrer. Je le dis, une idée qui ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. Je réitère ce qu'a dit c'est Mohamed et c'est Amine. Si vous trouvez l'opportunité, bien sûr qu'il faut bien la travailler. لا أنا ولا أمين ما دخلنا حتى درسنا الأمور وشفنا les pour et les contre et حتى إلا dans une année plus tard خصنا نرجعوا on a préparé ça. D'ailleurs, moi j'ai eu un appel 1 an après mon retour au Maroc par mon employeur qui m'a dit, et d'ailleurs Amine Kassarfo, c'est Felousis, il a sacré, il m'a dit واش بغيت ترجع. Ok, donc ça veut dire que ne brûlez pas de pont derrière soi. Préparez votre réseau, trouvez un soft landing. ما كاينش غير مايكروسوفت والاخوين، كاين بزاف. في ذاك الوقت كانت قليله باش تلقى الاخوين ولا مايكروسوفت، ولكن في هاد 20 ans ولا 22 ans plus tard راه هذا كاين بزاف لي زوبورتونيتي في المغرب. كاين beaucoup de multinationales, كاين beaucoup d'entreprises même marocaines qui sont gérées par des personnes comme nous, qui comprennent comment ça se passe, qui peuvent donner des salaires, qui suivent un petit peu la productivité et le résultat de l'entreprise et la contribution de l'employé. Donc, il ne faut pas avoir peur de rentrer. Il faut préparer sa rentrée, bien la préparer. Et, Inch'Allah, on a besoin de notre diaspora, surtout l'intelligentsia de notre diaspora. On n'a pas besoin de flous, beaucoup de gens croient que non, le bled a fait le flous. Maintenant, ce qu'il faut, c'est des compétences. C'est ce qu'a dit Si Mohamed, il faut qu'on ramène le savoir-faire. Et c'est le savoir-faire qui va créer la richesse. Et Ramadan Mubarak, tout le monde. Eid Mubarak مسبقا للجميع والله يزول علينا هذا الوباء ونتلاقاو physiquement أنا والسي أمين والسي محمد bientôt. Merci beaucoup pour votre présence. تبارك الله عليكم.
Merci à vous. تبارك الله عليكم.
Merci, Samir, merci, Amine.